Beautiful fruit.
Step one, get in the bathtub.
I love that.
Well, Jake, why don't you kind of share your background and story? I know our viewers would love to just hear how the heck you got into real estate. How'd you end up in Cambodia? How did you grow this great beard? And, did you just get back from Cambodia? Or what's, what are you doing now?
Yeah, so a brief run down my resume. So I went to school for finance, and out of school I was working for an asset management company. So I was doing some trading and some analyst work for a portfolio in Philadelphia. And when I was doing that, I started doing some real estate investing on the side. So I had another partner, and we were right as brewery town started to take off. That's when we were kind of jumping in. So we were doing some wholesaling of lots and some development work, and that partner actually spun out and started a development company that's doing pretty well. And he was doing a lot of work in Brewery Town, and now he's moved up to Strawberry Mansion. But when I was at West Point, I was a double major in Chinese and econ. So I always had this belief and fascination with Asia, that like Asia was the up and coming economy, and that's where the next century of business was going to be done. So I had always had an interest to work in Asia. So I was getting a little restless in Philadelphia. I'm not really a corporate guy, as we can tell by my appearance. So I did some networking and got connected with a guy who was running an investment company out in Cambodia. Mm-hmm. So they owned or had investments in about 20 portfolio companies in Cambodia, Laos, Thailand. So I went over to work for them as an analyst, and I ended up, we started the first craft brewery in Cambodia. So we owned a brewery in Phnom Penh. So I was like, my first task was to get the sales and distribution arm running for the craft brewery. So I did some work with that. I did some real estate work over there. And then eventually myself and one of the partners from this investment company, he was always obsessed with the agricultural sector, but we were the first private equity fund that had launched in Cambodia. So the founder of the fund was a lot more interested in these sexy investments or things that would kind of play well from a marketing angle. And generally agriculture does not check that box. So the partner that I became close with, he decided to leave the firm, and we raised money and we started a mango farming and export company. So we own a 200 plus acre plantation in rural Cambodia in the jungle. And we've successfully exported mangoes to Vietnam and China. So it was a really cool experience. I would go up to Shanghai and go to these big fruit markets and figure out how the export game worked there. It reminded me a lot that the fruit markets are crazy. It was sort of like the old stock market footage where it's like, I went there one time in January. It was all these Chinese guys in parkas with the fur hoods, and they're all smoking cigarettes, and a container would pull up and they'd open the side of it. And then it would be like an open air auction on whatever was in the container. So all these guys are like scrambling around with their papers. So it was kind of like you're on a trading floor, but you're outside doing fruit instead of public equities. And then, so all the while that was going on, I've always had my foot in the door with real estate investing. And I came home from Cambodia about 2 years ago. And since then, I've really ramped up the real estate investing stuff. So we're doing a lot more work in Norristown because we find the deals are a lot better than Philadelphia. And in the same time frame, I also helped launch a construction company with one of my buddies. So we were doing the real estate investing, and I find that most real estate investors, their pain point is contracting. It's hard to it's a very adversarial relationship, and your average contractor is not approaching a real estate project in the same way that an investor is. So there's just all kinds of disconnect throughout the life cycle of a project. So we kind of built this contracting company to serve our own investment needs and some other investors in the community, so that we're a lot more mutually aligned. And we understand that every time something goes over budget and there's an unforeseen event and that happens on a job site, at the very least, we know that is impacting your future rate of return. So just going in with that mindset allows us to help navigate that process a little better. So that's where I'm at right now. And then one of my good friends from West Point started a recovery sober living company. So I'm the CFO for that company, and I do most of my work remotely from Philadelphia, and I go down to Raleigh about once a month under other circumstances, not now, but so that's a very cool organization. And mainly why I got involved in that is because he wanted me to, the recovery business is a very interesting real estate business because all of these recovery houses and treatment centers are touching the commercial and residential real estate markets, and it's just a different profile than a normal real estate tenant would be. So you get higher rental rates, and there's some differences in zoning. So he brought me in started out as kind of a real estate consultant on how to build out their real estate arm, and how that was interacting with the recovery company. And then I ended up taking over the finance department.
That's awesome. So what I love about your story, Jake, is, man, I have so many things that I want to say there. First of all, I love what you talk about, construction being an adversarial relationship. There's a reason why the stereotypical contractor and people who deals with contractors is overweight, has a drinking problem, smokes 2 packs a day, and is wearing a barbecue stained wife beater. You know what I mean? Like, there's a reason why you have that mental image of a contractor, and it's just, it is what it is. And so, yeah, definitely that whole industry is ripe for disruption. And I think there's going to be a leveling of the playing field, and a lot of people who have been able to hack it in the contracting world are not going to be able to. And hopefully that means that, the good contractors aren't going to be booked 6 months out anymore, and therefore forcing us to use just whoever we can. There's been a lot of bad actors who have been able to survive because of what's been going on. But I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about. I also love the part of your story that, like, you're a real estate investor and something else. Like, so many people get into this thinking, oh, I hate my job, I want to quit my job and be a full-time real estate investor. You actually, it sounds like, have 3 jobs and are a real estate investor. like that's the whole thing, like, find meaning, find ways of giving back, find ways of doing things. And so you're like the CFO of this company, and you're advising on this stuff over here. And also, how you got this job is by networking and working and doing well, and this job over here. And it just kind of all plays together. So I love that. But talk to us for a little bit, if you could. And I actually have to step off screen here and grab a loaf of bread out of the oven. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but, like, baking bread is the new Tiger King. Everybody's doing it this week. So I actually have a loaf of bread that I timed this wrong. I have to get it out of the oven. But tell us about, like, so you're investing in Norristown. You're a wholesaler. You're buying 3 units. You're flipping. You're buying rentals. Tell us about, like, the Jake Summers real estate investment thing.
Yeah, so it's like I said, it started out in Philadelphia, and we were primarily doing we were buying lots through the sheriff's sale and wholesaling them and buying shells, and it was kind of focused on the development angle. But now I'm a firm believer in building out the rental portfolio. Like, I think that's a great way to build long-term wealth and build some cash flow. And for me, I just find it to be stimulating, and it's a cool side gig. And I think that's basically like what Judah was talking about, is that, like, so for me, real estate, I'm a firm believer in the side hustle idea, or like a jobby type thing, where, like, you take a hobby and turn it into a potential future job. But yeah, you can very easily enter the real estate market as just a very passive investor, and you're putting a few hours in a week. And there's always ways to sacrifice your return a little bit by bringing other parties into the equation. So, like, the less you want to make, you can outsource more of the work. And it's a good way to kind of dip your toe into the real estate community. But yeah, so right now we're pretty aggressively trying to build out a rental portfolio in Norristown. We really think Norristown is a good cash flow scene. We like the Section 8 model and pricing. Montgomery County is a lot easier to deal with than Philadelphia. Like when I call the permit office in Norristown, they know me by name. They're like, "Hey Jake, how's your week going? Like we haven't seen you here in a while." And you try and call the, like L&I in Philadelphia, and you wait 6 months for a response on something that you needed 5.5 months ago.
Well, on that note, a lot of the smaller municipalities, right? They're a lot easier to deal with, but sometimes you get the flip side of that, where they might not have as many online resources. You might not have a lot of the, I don't know, the ease of transaction that you have with a larger a community. But if you can get in and you get a good name for yourself and build that relationship, now all of a sudden you get all that ease without all the headaches that go along with, bureaucracy and all the other crap.
Yeah, that's an awesome point. Like Norristown, great example. You can't do an online permit application. You got to go in person. And the first time I went, it was very difficult and frustrating. And then, but like once you establish that,
you don't know what you're doing. You've got to. It takes the courage to go down there and say, "Hey, I don't know what I'm doing. How do I do X, Y, Z?" And hope that they're not going to laugh you out of the building.
Yeah, I had one interaction in the Lower Marion permit office where I came out of there and I called one of my workers and I was like, I just got hazed for the first time in a permit. Like I think he looked at me, he said I was a young guy, and he was just like, he had the plans in front of him. He's like, "What size nails are you using?" I'm like,
right.
I'm like, there's obviously a right answer to this. So you tell me what size nails I need to use. You're doing this quiz thing with me, and I get what you're trying to do, but just tell me the right answer. I'm here. I'm compliant. I want
to give you the right answer. I want to do it the right way. Help me help you.
Right. Yeah, that was my approach, and he continued to bust my chops. But then yeah, like you, a lot of times you're going to have that experience up front, and then like so much of real estate investing, like anything in life, is just persistence and like willing to kind of laugh off your failures and frustrations and just like continue to storm that beach, so to speak.
Josh and Jake, I want to make a point here, because that's what being comfortable with failure looks like. A lot of people say, "Oh, if I build up a 100-unit portfolio and it failed, I would be okay, getting out there and starting again and building another 100-unit portfolio." That's not, when people say pushing through failure, it means going down to the permit office, making a fool out of yourself, and deciding to not let that ruin your day and continue taking action. It means, then you have a bad marketing call with the person who's sending out your postcards. And then you've got dealing with repetitive failure are those little failures along the way, anything that would stop a normal person. And I got to tell you, not being somebody like the average investor doesn't come from a construction background, didn't just recently, launch a mango plantation in Cambodia and is used to dealing with, surly government officials. And they just are very self-conscious and self-aware and nervous about all these things. And so for them, getting hazed like that by the big burly contractor would be enough for them to say, okay, I quit. Subconsciously, mentally. And you've got to recognize that when people say push through failure, that's the type of thing they're talking about.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal point. And I think
thank you.
Like you're correct. Like when most people think about failure, they're talking about the end of the line, big, massive failure. And to add a little bit to your point, like I think it's the fear of the micro failures that keep people from going down this. Like, I don't know how many people like you can go on and file for an LLC and it takes about 3 minutes on the PA corporate website. But so many people are like, I don't even know how to start a company. I don't know where to start. And it's like they have this, fear of filling out one thing wrong on the LLC application, or fear of opening the bank account before they got their EIN number and then getting on the IRS shit list. And it's like all these like little, and like that's the difference between people sitting here and talking about doing real estate investing or some of these other entrepreneurial activities and pushing through it. So yeah, that's a really great point. It's like you're going to survive every little micro failure, and like so those are the type of things that don't haunt you for years. You embarrass yourself in the permit office on a Monday, and by Friday you're not even thinking about it.
I think it's important to push through that stuff. That's why I always tell people, whenever somebody has not started their investing career yet, and they're like, should I set up a separate bank account? Should I do an LLC? Should I do a C Corp? Should I do a Nevada trust that the major partner is a Delaware, limited trust, or how do I blah, blah, blah? No, go do 3 or 4 deals in your own name. Use your own, bank account, use your own, name, make money at real estate to actually have something, to actually have some assets to protect, because chances are the fear of getting started and the fear of setting up an LLC and the worry about how to set up an LLC is going to actually be what keeps you from taking action. And if you just get started, you can steer. My uncle told me, and he died earlier this year, and I miss him greatly already because he was one of my real estate mentors. He said it's much easier to steer a moving car. Get the car moving, start taking action, and then take corrective action along the way. Chances are your first deal, you're not going to be signing for a multi-billion-dollar loan that could totally sink your ship. So you're probably going to do okay, even if you totally screw up your first deal.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
So Jake, to kind of transition here, let's talk about, one of the things that we discussed this morning before our call was kind of your expertise in market analysis. And we talked about some of the correlations or non-correlations between the real estate market and the stock market. Everybody knows the stock market's going crazy. Right now, we kind of have a stagnant, situation with all these real estate transactions on hold, not really showing properties, all that kind of stuff. What do you see as, is the stock market a good indicator of where the real estate market's going, or are they not connected, or, what's your take on it?
Yeah. So like I said, I spent a couple of years, working behind a Bloomberg terminal, and I was very actively involved in the public equity side of things. And what I learned during that time is that, first off, the public equities markets are actually very small in terms of the scale of other asset classes. Like the bond market, for example, is 5 times the size of the equity market, and nobody pays attention to the bond market.
Correct.
And then, the actual dollar value of global real estate holdings, dwarfs both of those markets. At the end of the day, the public equity market is pretty small relative to all the different assets that are out there. And in a time like this, one of the things the public equity markets, the stock market, they're inherently a pricing mechanism. They're supposed to give you an up-to-date, price analysis of what any asset is worth. And I think that people oftentimes get lulled into a false sense of security, and they just look at the public equity markets and they assume that's the end-all be-all barometer for how our economy is doing. So in this case, for example, we saw an immediate dip in the equity markets, and now we're seeing a rebound. And I think a lot of people, especially in the real estate market, I've been on calls lately, and people are like, well, stocks rebounded. We're already coming out of this thing. And the stock market is meant to price things to the second. It's not a very forward-looking operation. Yes, it's based on the value of future cash flows of said company, but it's much more about what is happening right now in the minute. Immediate news is the only thing that dramatically impacts the price of a stock in the moment. If a CEO retires or something traumatic happens with the company, it gets priced in instantly. So I think people are lulled into this idea that all asset classes operate in that sort of way. So what we're seeing right now is we don't know anything. That's the frustrating part about the real estate markets is so I personally had a number of deals where, so I had 4 units under contract to purchase in Norristown before this all went down. And then we had about 10 lots that we had under contract to sell in Philadelphia before COVID. And we're just signing extensions, and both parties are kind of doing a little bit of a dance on both sides, trying to see if there's any wiggle room on the price and if we can, even keep these alive, or people are trying to get out of the deals because it was at a, too high of a price to begin with under the conditions 2 months ago. So I think like, yeah, the frustration with the real estate market is I don't think we have any idea of what the damage is yet. And I don't know if it's, we kind of have to take a mosaic approach and look at like all these little pieces of information. Like, so like for my analysis right now, like what I'm looking at is I have my residential real estate deals in Philly, and those have all stopped. And I know that myself as a buyer, I'm trying to pull back and stretch some of these things along. And I'm hoping that the sellers are going to drop the price. And then I know that I'm on the exact opposite side of that, where I'm the seller in the Philadelphia lots, and I'm trying to extend these deals and make sure they don't fall out of contract, because I don't know if the price I got a month ago is what I'm going to get 2 months from now. So right. I'm literally doing the exact opposite dance on these PA deals I have. And then I'm also looking at, so for the business in North Carolina, our lease on our office is up in June. So we were actually about ready to get to sign a lease before this happened on a new space. And then we've totally pulled back from that. We've negotiated an extension in our current space, and there's just no real data out there for how this is impacting the commercial markets. And I know that like the brokers that we're talking to, and like they're talking to the listing parties, and they're not really willing to budge at all. Like nobody's talking about slashing prices in commercial real estate, and nobody's talking about like they're just starting to entertain concessions and maybe a month or two of free rent and some increased tenant upfit allowance or stuff like that. But it's amazing at how little we know, and everybody is just paralyzed waiting for more information. And we don't know if we're going to rebound quickly out of this, or if this is going to be a protracted recessionary environment. So like, we don't want to be the ones that sign a $30 per square foot lease, which was yesterday's market price in North Carolina. But we're also aware of the fact that in 6 months we might be signing a $30 a square foot lease.
$30 a square foot lease? That's what commercial rents are in North Carolina?
That's Class A in Raleigh.
Good golly.
Well, yeah, you're rolling your eyes. I had a conversation 2 weeks ago with a commercial broker, leasing agent out of Harrisburg, and her price points were minimal. Her bottom line was $25 a square foot, up to 50. So, I mean, I've seen this too. And you know what? It's interesting you said that, Jake, is that like, I feel like as soon as everything reopens and people are getting back to work, there's still going to be probably a 90-day delay till we kind of let things wash out, you know. And in the retail housing market, you're going to have people rushing back in to buy houses. You know, there's going to be a push with a lot of people going out to eat and all the other stuff that goes along with it. But especially in the commercial and retail and storefronts and things like that, I think we're going to have a lot of balls up in the air, and it's going to take some time for it to kind of wash out and just see what businesses are coming back, what new startups are really going to take over that space, if they are, and where the economy is going to adjust with the new economic factors that we.
I just want our listeners to know that like most of central Pennsylvania is at about $10 to maybe $12 per square foot, you know, when it comes to commercial space. Like, that's why, I mean, I get it. Like, Raleigh's a different market. Just even thinking about $30 a square foot is high rent. So.
We would love $12 a square foot rent if you can find any.
Yeah, not yet.
So yeah, and then the other, to finish up with my rant, the other piece of information I'm looking at is, so we applied for the SBA PPP loan for Greenhill, which is the North Carolina company. So I've been like very in tune with that whole process and when the funds ran out and who was getting them and how that's all stuff is shaking out. So like, that's a pretty good indicator of, you know, how future businesses, which have a huge intersection obviously with the commercial real estate market, are going to come out of this. And it's like, that's like another thing that's like, we're here almost two months removed from when this stuff started to really happen. And there's still, you know, 80% of businesses haven't even received any of their emergency financing yet. So it's like, we just don't know how many businesses are going to survive this and what cuts they're going to have to make in terms of space and expenses. And I think it's just going to take a long time for this information to sort out in the real estate markets. And that's, like I said, always. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the other thing that really scares me. So I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been, ever since I was 17, and actually even before that. When I was like 5, I was buying penny candy from the corner store and then selling it, half a block away for 2 pennies. Legit did that. I made $300 doing that before I was double digits. So I've always been an entrepreneur. But the crazy thing is, like, if Jake Summers has a falafel stand on the corner and goes out of business, and I'm like, hey, I got a family falafel recipe, maybe I can open up that falafel, maybe I can replace it. Or maybe a falafel stand shouldn't have been there. Maybe an ice cream stand should be there. And I'm going to go in there and open an ice cream stand. Like, that's how the invisible hand of the market works. But what worries me, though, is, will entrepreneur number 2 that usually fills the gap, right? Because nature hates a vacuum. Well, entrepreneurship and the economy abhors a vacuum too. Entrepreneur number 2 is going to be leery because of this huge black swan that we've just seen. We usually price black swans into our cost of doing business, but they're kind of out there and they're kind of ethereal and they're kind of, hey, who knows, maybe kind of would ya. And we also usually have some type of insurance cover for those black swan events. I think that we're going to recover pretty quickly, but there's going to be a lot of hemorrhaging and there's going to be a lot of die-off in business. I worry that there's not going to be as strong a restart of new businesses because of this recent black swan. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Well,
yeah, and that's the biggest problem with any, right? It's like we were talking about with this fear of failure stuff. Like, so now these people who had an idea and were about to launch with something are now looking. They're like, oh, well, the falafel stand went out of business. What, like, should I really be doing this? Is that the right corner? And it's like you're in that paralyzed fear state. And I would say that there's a reason the 3 of us are on this call today, right? Like, I think, like, if you're an entrepreneur, like, it's a very communal, like, we always want to share information with one another. And like, we're this kind of weird right arm of the economy. And like, we have to build each other up and hold each other accountable. And that's like one thing that I've been blown away. Like, I thought becoming an entrepreneur was going to be a lonely road, and everybody wants to share, like I said, with all this SBA stuff, like, everybody I know from whatever industry who's an entrepreneur is sharing information. And like, I had success with this bank, try this one. Like, we're not in competition with one another, and we're lonely and as an entrepreneur, and we want to help one another. So that's like the big, like, new entrepreneurs need to stick their head out there, and they need to network and know that, like, there's a whole community of people that want to help you out there. Like, I would love to help the ice cream guy launch his next business. Like, because there's, a ton of people that have experience that we can share that makes that learning curve so much shorter.
And on that note, like, don't be afraid because you've never done it before. Don't be afraid to ask the stupid question, because we've all asked the stupid question probably 5 or 6 or 10 times. It takes asking the questions and figuring it out and going and looking at like an idiot in the permit office and getting hazed, to get to the other side where you've got friends in every place that you're working. You got connections that you can pick up the phone and ask a question, or, get an answer to the stuff you don't know. So, just really, it's all about action. It's really, put together a plan and step out the door and get started.
Yep.
Yeah, I completely agree, Josh. And I think that, the fortune favors the bold, and now is the time to be setting up to take action. And Jake, what you said is exactly right. It's half of what Josh and I mean, sometimes we come right out and say it, but like, and sometimes we do a better job of it than others, but like, subconsciously and subtly, this is a place to talk about what's working. This is a place to talk about what you can be doing. This is a place to talk about the good news of the economy. Turn on the rest of your Facebook feed to find out the doom and gloom and what's not working, what's not happening, and why it won't work. Tune in here to Jake and Judah, or Josh and Judah, to find out what is working, what is happening, what you can be doing to be successful, and the good news. Because you're exactly right, Jake. Like, I think I could If I wrote a book today, I do not know who I would dedicate it to. I would have to have like my dedication page on my book would have like 18 people on it because I've been helped in my business career by so many people who have not made dime one off of helping Judah Hoover get to where he is. That's what's great about entrepreneurship. That's what's great about capitalism.
Yeah. So on the good news front, I heard yesterday that it looks like, I mean, amazingly, there may be a vaccine ready for human application as early as late May, early June, which would be amazing. And certainly by September, there's a couple different research labs that are getting closer and closer and closer to this vaccine. And once that presents itself, it's 100% game on. There's all the arguments about reopening kind of fly out the window at that point, which is good all the way around.
Yeah, 100%. I'm excited.
Yeah. Jake, it's been awesome having you on here. We've come to the end of our about half hour. We like to take a couple minutes and just kind of let you, pitch anything you'd like to pitch, talk about anything that you've got going on that people might be interested in, and maybe how to contact you if you're interested.
Yeah, certainly. So the construction companies obviously shut down for the time being, but I would say, like, if I'm going to give a pitch, I would say it's in the lending space. So this is one of those interesting moments where, we've seen some volatility in the stock markets, and oftentimes people are looking for ways to, diversify their portfolio. So we as a real estate company are always, happy to talk to new lenders who want to do private loans and figure out a way out of the stock market and a way to have some more reliable cash flow as a private note. So yeah, my cell phone number is 610-999-4966. You can give me a call if you ever want to talk lending, or if you need any construction tips or anything like that, or like we said, just to have a conversation with an entrepreneur and talk about your fears. Like, that would probably be the coolest phone call I could get. But yeah, thanks to you for setting this up. This is a cool thing you're doing, and I think it's good to focus on opportunities and the good news and what we can control and what we can do about this situation.
That's exactly right. I'm putting your contact information in the comments here. So
okay.
If you want to reach Jake Summers, check out the comments on the post, and you can give him a call. Judy, you got anything else for today?
Yeah, man. I'm super excited, Josh. I love going down this journey with you. I'm getting so much feedback from my circle, and I'm sure you are too, about people who are loving this show, and we appreciate the people who love this show. And keep on tuning in, and we're going to try and keep them short and pithy and to the point. And we're going to be back here at 12 o'clock tomorrow with another great guest, more positive news, more great content that is valuable today. And it's also going to be recorded like all these shows have been. You can watch them if you've missed them, and catch up, and we'll keep on going from there.
Awesome. Jake, one more time, thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You too. Thanks for joining us, everybody watching. Have a great day.
See everybody.
Bye.